Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Woodstock, Georgia. This is Fearless Formula with Sharon Klein.
Welcome to Fearless Formula on Business RadioX, where we talk about the ups and downs of the business world and offer words of wisdom for business success. I am your host, Sharon Klein, and in the studio, I've got a very cool individual who wears a lot of hats, which is fascinating to me. He's an award-winning producer, director, writer, actor. He is also a member of the military. Thank you for your service. He's also a member of both acting unions. Is that correct? Okay, SAG and AFTRA, and also
Actors Equity.
Actors Equity. Thank you. I was like, what is it called? I'm so used to SAG AFTRA. And also, luckily enough, I got to work with on the set of Fatal Attraction in Tennessee about 5 or 6 weeks ago. And since then, we've been able to keep in touch and help each other in the acting world a little bit. So I just want to thank you for coming to the studio, Rodney. How do you want me to say your name?
Oh, Rodney Roldan.
Because I said it wrong the last time I met you. You were like, that's so American sounding.
No, I say that because it's like, so a lot of my, Puerto Rican, Cuban friends is like Roldan, but you say Roldan.
Roldan.
Like Taran, but they say Roldan.
Yeah, that's what I said. And you were like, interesting. I'm sorry I said it wrong, but yeah.
No, it's fine. When they mail me letters, it says Roland. And then I say, technically it's the same, but I'm not going to go by that. I won't pay it. It's not me. I'm just kidding.
Get it right, everybody out there, including myself. Thank you for coming to the studio. I'm so excited to talk to you.
I'm excited to be here. I love doing this, and it's great. Great meeting you and talking to you on set a few weeks ago, and, I'm happy to be here.
Thanks. It was really fun. I talk about it all the time, so I won't talk about it too much today. But what's really cool about you is that you're very unassuming. You're just on the set doing like normal things, just chit-chatting about the military and a little bit, but you have awards in your acting awards. You've got producing awards. You've got directing awards, all like on your wall in your house. Like it looks like it's fake, but it's not. It's on a shelf. I'm like, what's that back there? Anyway, I'm very excited to hear about your success this way, because I think there are many, many people who would be listening to this who are in the acting world who would love to be able to have that kind of credit to themselves. So can you talk to me a little bit about, I know you're a New York native, right? How did you come down here to Georgia?
So while I was, my entire life, but I've kind of had this dual military and then getting into the arts world. So I've been kind of wearing both hats. I started off in the Navy, and then while I was in the Navy active duty, I started doing TV and film acting, took a break from the military, and then saw that I had like so many years left in the Navy. It was like 9.5 years in the Navy, and I said, I don't want to throw that away, right? So then I went into the Army Reserve and kind of toggled between being on deployments and, doing like active duty assignments, especially during COVID. And then currently the last 4 or 5 years. So COVID is interesting because that's actually how I ended up down here.
Wow.
So we were on, I was on ADOS orders, which in civilian sense, it just means like temporary active duty to help a lot of the medical units come into the city, since that was like the epicenter. But at the same time, I had a lot of acting roles going on, but then a lot of them started disappearing. And so one of the challenges I've had, like as an artist, is kind of like balancing. So a lot of times I'll be on a show and then say, you got to go overseas to Afghanistan or Iraq. And it's like, oh man, what do I do? So I have to get off a show. So I've kind of used to toggling between both. But in 2020, a lot of the project got canceled, and I got scared. And then the Army was like, oh, hey, there's a AGR position down in Georgia. And I was like, I didn't know what that was. And he said, well, you won't deploy, but you get to, work with the reserve unit. So you'll be active duty, but work with them. And then at least you'll have time to be like, so I was scared to come down here. So I got the orders to come down, and I said, I don't know what's going on. Like, I'm going to be leaving. I felt like I was going to be leaving my acting career behind and the opposite happened. I got down here, and the following year I started getting busy with my career again. And then up until this moment here, it kind of went on the upswing on a lot of different variety, like things I never did before, like hand modeling too, like of all things. And then you were talking about the awards earlier. I had started getting into documentary filmmaking, and I started that in 2015, 16. And while I was down here, I ended up doing a feature called Country and Courage. And that that was more of using Shakespeare to like heal soldiers.
I would love to know. I was reading about that. I would love to know how you marry those together, because that's a kind of a very surprising mix.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering how you kind of discovered that Shakespeare has anything to do with soldiers and how they process and deal with what they've been exposed to.
Yeah, so, and I actually have to give credit to my Shakespeare teachers at Stella Adler because I went to Stella Adler in 2016, 17 at Iraq, and then when I came back, I finished it. But I've watched Shakespeare as a kid, right? And I love Macbeth and all, look at like Hotspur in King John, all these plays. But there's one thing when you're watching it as a child, and then later on, because like Shakespeare is all love and war, right? So like when you get older, then you start realizing there's a connection. So I remember working on a few monologues, and one was the Hotspur monologue where Lady Percy starts telling him about like the nightmares that he has. And my Shakespeare teacher at the time, she was like, Rodney, you being a soldier, you understand that like he was talking about PTSD in this monologue. And I was like, that's great. So I started like researching it, and then I started seeing a lot of like similarities between the experiences. There was Troilus and Cressida, right? So the whole speech about Troy, it's winning in our weakness. So I started thinking about like our approach to like Afghanistan, all this stuff. So looking at these monologues, I was bringing like personal experience into it. Well, later on, I was thinking of reading Shakespeare. I was like, you're talking about PTSD, and then I started meeting different people that like there's a group up in New York. There's a program called Decruit, and I talk about it in this documentary where he works at he's an instructor at NYU, and he has this program called Decruit, which is kind of helping soldiers with PTSD, but then using Shakespeare the same way they taught us at Stella Adler. So I wanted to do a documentary on Veterans Day, PTSD, but then I was like, well, I want to introduce something into society a lot of people don't know, and that the arts is like a way of healing. So then that's what kind of motivated me to, form the basis for doing this project on it. And, and it was a good experience because I got to talk to like Berry College out in Rome, Georgia. I got to work with NYU on it, a lot of soldiers. And then there's 2 veterans on there from the Vietnam War that I got to talk to.
Wow.
And then I had like some other soldiers in my unit at the time that were helping me gather the interviews. So when I put it together, I was like, wow, this is telling a different story. And you also got to think of like the little subtleties in like as far as education is concerned, because one of the units was the Harlem Hellfighters that I talk about in there. And then there's a soldier out in Alabama. She was like, Rodney, as a black female, I didn't realize that this was the kind, like this unit was like an all black unit out of New York. And they, in the First World War, they got World War I, I said First World War, but they got I think it was the cross from France for one of the battles. And the irony behind that, by the way, I'm going all over the place. But
that's okay.
The irony behind that is that when I was in high school, I was in a group called the Harlem Youth Marine Cadets, right? And we used to drill out of the 369th Armory. That was the Harlem Hellfighters. That building, that's what they were at. So later on, when I did, I was like, oh, wow, there's a lot of me in this project, being in the military, studying Shakespeare, having that. So when I was doing it, it was a lot of personal feeling into it, but it was also a broader thing that a lot of people don't address, which is like the PTSD or the things that soldiers go to on a daily basis.
What was it like to see your film completed?
It was so stressful at first because honestly, I was trying to get it to be, disseminated on Veterans Day. Oh. So I literally spent 23 hours up until that morning editing it throughout the night, like doing final edits. And I'm kind of a perfectionist, so I was trying to make sure there's a frame missing. We got to correct
Was
it.
it you who filmed it? You had your own camera and went and
did
it?
So,
did you hire a crew or anything
no,
like that? Wow.
I had help from another sergeant. He was capturing 2 of the interviews up in Tennessee. And then, some of the Decruit, they sent me some footage they had.
Then you edited it all together?
So I did. It was like 10. I filmed like 90% of it.
Wow.
And then I invested a lot of money into it because I also had some of it I had to get like stock footage. Some I had to use I used previous footage from. So let me jump back a little bit. So in the Army, I'm working public affairs. So a lot of the footage came from like things that I actually filmed overseas.
You had access to.
Yes. And this is public information. Like there's a site called Divids where all this stuff goes on, as you know.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of that's from there. So I gathered all that together, and then I was editing it, kind of creating the graphics for it.
Did you do the voice? Did you do voiceover for it?
Yeah,
as well?
so I narrate a lot of it, and then I had another actor friend of mine. He did one of the monologues. So like, there's some pieces in this project where you have a soldier, myself, and then another. But they're doing little monologues from, like I did, the to be or not to be monologue. And that's that dilemma. So that's what we had it. So, and then we have the Lady Percy monologue in there as well. And then the Caspian speech, which is famous in the military as well.
Wow, who knew? I didn't know.
So it's
What are you finding that being able to tap into the performance aspect of Shakespeare for these soldiers, what does it help them process?
So I think it brings, so the language, like it's one thing that I find interesting about Shakespeare, you look at that as, that was written hundreds of years ago. I'm like, but the fact that it still speaks to soldiers, or not just soldiers, but people today. And so the degree in which the depth, I should say, that the writing goes into, and then the depth of the experience of the person, especially one that's been in combat, and reciting these words, it just kind of, there's like a life to it that it connects, and it kind of brings those feelings on the surface and brings meaning to it or understanding. So I think that there's something, and then it's even the action of studying, right? Because a lot of times Shakespeare's not one of the things you can just read. You got to sit there, and like one thing they used to make us do it, and my acting school, was take each word and define it. And there's no phone, right? You have a book, you're writing, you have a dictionary, and then what does that word mean? Oh, it means this and that. No, what does it mean to you? What do you think it means? So when you're dissecting the script, you start realizing the depth of this writing. It kind of coincides with the depth you experience, because those kind of war experiences that's deep, and that's there's a lot of layers that get coded, and so people can cope. So like, we remove those layers and kind of connect with the person inside and the words on the page, and I think that's what makes it like so like beautiful thing. Actually, it's like an artistic work.
What I think is cool with what you're talking about is that there's a feeling of collectiveness, like 200, 300, however many years ago these things were written, is still applicable today, which means that you're not alone in the human experience. Right.
Exactly. And that's what I found interesting, because it was like, especially that Lady Percy speech, when she's like the sweats and the sees like images of war, and I'm looking at that, I'm like, man, when he wrote this, like humans are humans, right?
Yeah.
No matter how long, it's 2,000 years ago.
They just didn't know it was called post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yeah. You look at, it was like, I think it was 79 AD, Pompeii, and they found bread in the oven. Like, people did things we did today.
Same things, yeah.
So it's kind of, we know that we're, like, a lot of soldiers know they're not alone. Because it even helped me. There were some things that I seen that I didn't know affected me. And when I started doing a lot of acting exercises, some of that thing, it surfaced. And I'm like, I would have a dream. Like, what the heck did that come from? I thought that was something I forgot about. But it's because when you truly are like, if you truly diving into acting and get into character, you're removing layers, right? And you're getting into who the character is. So you start, it's almost like a form of therapy for yourself, if you truly hone in on the character.
You won a Davy Award for this.
Yes.
What was that like?
It was actually okay. So with these awards, I didn't even know about these things, right? So like, I kind of knew what the Telly Awards were, and I had this thing when I started acting, like, oh, I want to win, I want to get an Emmy, an Oscar, a SAG award,
a Tony Award.
Yeah, a Tony. And then the Telly, I was like, oh, I like that, and the reason why I Telly, because when I first started acting, I saw a lot of the companies that do like industrial videos and things like that, and they had a lot. And I'm like, what's that? And they're like, oh, it's for like commercials, documentaries, a lot of businesses. And so I put two of my projects. Like, the first one I did was on it was a 20-minute film on a POW. And the cool thing about that was I filmed like his granddaughter in Germany of where the POW site was, and then back home talking to the son or her father. And so I got 2 Telly Awards for that, and then 3 for Country and Courage. And then I answered that into the Communicator Awards, and then it won, and they made me a member of the, say AVA, which is the Academy of Interactive Video. So I became a member of that, and then they also have like I think they run the Davy Awards, and I forgot to know one more, but so I ended up winning there. So I thought it was a big deal for me. oh, this is really cool.
Well,
that somebody would recognize that, you know, because at first it's like you do these things, you don't know about. Some of you do it like, oh, I'm gonna get an award, but I didn't even know about that. I didn't start getting them until like 2018.
Wow,
So,
that's not that long ago.
No.
But you have lots of awards in lots of different ways. Could you even imagine that would be your story?
No, I didn't. And like I said, I didn't know about it. And that to me was because like I said, a lot of people chase things, but for me it was more the thing with the award is like, oh, that somebody actually believed in it, and they're showing it on their platform and letting everybody else know, hey, check this out. And so it's more of like the message getting out. But I didn't know that would happen. It was still kind of surreal for me today, because then people would say, oh, you got all this stuff here. It's like, yeah, but I still don't know what that means. I'm sorry. I hope the members of the Academy don't hear that. The Oscars, like, he knows not going to know what it means.
No, but what I think is maybe what we're supposed to do is, rather than create something for the end result, like I want an award, you're creating something that has meaning for you and for a lot of other people, obviously.
Yeah.
And has catharsis to it and healing to it. So I think there's something about the energy of that as being just for the betterment of people, not so that you'll get an award. Maybe people can sense that it was something that you were so personally attached to and wanted such good things for the end. Not, I would like to be able to have a shelf with all these trophies and awards on it.
Yeah, because I didn't even, so, and then that's like some part of the business that, you know, because I've been acting, so I did a lot of times other actors, especially ones that I meet that are stars, like that I've worked with, and they say, oh, one thing about acting is like you also have to get into like writing and directing. But it wasn't like I did that because it was like the advice is to direct. Let me direct something. It was just in the military, being in public affairs, we tell the soldier story. So I was like, well, I want to tell this soldier story, but as a civilian or as an actor. And that's how I got into that first documentary. And with Country and Courage, one thing, I got offers on it, like to sell it to different streaming services. And I couldn't, though, because the reason there's the other side of it where if you film anything military related, because it has to go on divots, right?
Understood.
Which is fine. You know, it's not like I have a regret for that because it's still being seen. But like some people, oh, you can make money. I was like, but that wasn't my intention at all. You know, my thing is, like I said, it's a message. And with acting in general, like any kind of performance is to connect with people. They used to say that, different teachers used to tell me, like, acting says the things that we don't want to say or we're afraid to say. So whenever you doing like documentaries or things, that you have to expose certain truths that educate people, especially nowadays with a lot of stuff going on. You know, I say nowadays, but, over the last couple of years.
Right. Well, and there's an other side of it, the acting side. Obviously, there's like creating media and movies, but then the documentary side is real life, you know, so there's the ethical responsibility there as well.
Yes, and telling stories is what we do. If you think about whether it's fact or fiction, as performers, we tell a story. Like I love music, right? So whenever I listen to a song, every song has a story, but every song also, everything I do has music with it. Like I listen to songs, so it reminds me of a memory. So it's like a trigger for certain good, bad, sad, happy memories, or things like that. So the same thing I see with like, film, TV, documentaries, things like that. It has to trigger a response in the viewer, and that response might be to be empathetic towards something, or respond, or to do something, like call to action. And I think as artists overall, whether you're a singer, dancer translates, movement into an experience. There's a responsibility to performers to bring to life, writing or anything, so that you can communicate with viewers into doing something for the betterment of, humanity.
I love it because there is that feeling of we are more alike than we are different. And this is such a great medium to be able to highlight that. Mm-hmm. There are lots of different ways people do.
Right.
But to be able to know that collectively we're all sitting in a movie theater and we all gasp at the same thing or laugh at the same thing. Having that sense of, not being alone. I'm not an anomaly person. I actually am kind of just like a lot of other people. Mm-hmm. That translates to me that we're not all enemies. We actually are more friends.
Right.
And because we're so much alike. That's not to say that everyone you meet is, going to be your friend.
No.
I just mean that we don't have to always be fighting all the time, because as if we're all very different. There's so many things that we all like so much. And that's why I like doing this show, because I really want to focus on the things that make people feel seen and heard and understood and valued. And who doesn't love that feeling?
Right.
But you also have another film. It was called Typography Through Time. Can you talk about that one?
Oh, so I'm like kind of a history buff. So that one was that was okay. So I go to Liberty University. I'm working on my PhD right now, and that was.
If you don't have enough on your plate.
No, I know. I've always been like that. Like,
no, I know.
Even as a kid,
I'm
like doing three things at once.
Yeah, that's funny.
But that was actually my so it was for my master's degree, and that was my final project. It was supposed to be a paper, but I wanted to turn it into a film, and I had the opportunity of, so at the time, if you watch these episodes, they have to do with like topography and how it's changed, but it also has literally to do with like the Protestant Reformation and the
there's a religious connotation to it.
No, there is, because at the time it was kind of considered revolutionary, like how language or how things were written. So a lot of those things happened. They kind of coincided with what was happening in real life. Like you had so one of them is the Age of Enlightenment. So during that, you had a lot more changes on how things are written. And then if you go back to the Renaissance or the Reformation, it was like kind of restricted to, the text was kind of restricted to how the old Bible was written. So in this project, I talk about topography, but then how like the Latin Bible was translated, by what was that? Martin Luther and his 90. Give you 99.
Wow, look at you.
His the thesis where. So and then you look at the what was it, Johannes Gutenberg and the printing press. He's credited to that, but it actually came from China, because they had but he kind of revolutionized it. But he basically translated the Bible into German and then English as well. I guess English offshoot from that, so that the common people can read it.
Which changed everything.
Right.
Which changed everything, because the common people started to become educated and have an understanding, and then now they started to have ideas.
Yep. So that's kind of like this all mixes together. It's not like, so people look at type like how, and they're like, oh, whatever. And then even in your office here, like you have
all these different fonts and things.
Yeah, all the fonts, and it's interesting because I love history and museums, but there's like several. There's one in Columbia, I think. There's a museum. I'm trying to forget. And in New York, they talk about like how these came about, because it's like you start mixing in the effects of color, like reds and blues, and how it pops up to the eye. And then like, something with like a white background can stand out so that the person would probably buy it more or watch it more. So that's kind of later on, like in the 21st century. But if you go back, these things started being incorporated, where they started changing like how topography looked. And I wanted to highlight that in there. And that's, so that's what I did. So it's like a mini series kind of thing. And it was actually on TV, and I was blown away with that. So like, that was a mistake. So not mistake. It was something that happened by accident, I should say, not a mistake. So when I did it, there was a company called Docs Now Plus, and they reached out to me saying, hey, we like your project. We want it to be on our experimental platform where we're going to just play documentaries. So, I signed a contract, and I'm like, is this real? And then one day I'm looking at the apps, and I see Docs Now, and I click it, and I'm like, this is amazing. And I took pictures of it.
Oh my gosh, how cool is that?
So I was like, oh, I made it there. So I didn't, this is something that.
But it's cool, because it's things that you're naturally interested in.
Yeah.
That you think, wouldn't it be interesting for more people to know about this? And then you take the initiative to do it. Why are you fearless like that?
I don't know.
Great. We'll move on.
I think I came from a big family, and I think like growing up in New York, just one of them things like as a kid, I felt like I was always on the alert. So I was a kid in the 80s, and back then it was a weird time. Like there was a lot of we lived in I think, but it seems like everywhere in these big cities was kind of like challenging, but we lived in a generally nice area, but there was still things you had to be watched out. And then growing up in a big family, you first introduced to fighting with your brothers or arguments, and there's 6 of us in this house. So I think one of the things, especially being like my brother Michael and I were the middle child, so it's kind of like, okay, you kind of psychologically develop this, how am I going to be different from everyone else? And then I think that slowly grows into like, well, I'm going to be the best at this. And I was a straight A student growing up.
Oh,
and
congrats.
yeah, but then I also had like, challenges with that. Like, and so, but, I think that caused me to like try to break through and like prove something. And I think that just grows over time. But then we realized that that's the wrong approach. Like proving something, you shouldn't ever have to prove something to yourself or anyone, to just be. So I think for a good part of my life, it was about proving something. Like when I was getting, I was like always competing for something, right? Or well, I'm gonna get this, or I'm gonna get like even when I first started acting in my 20s, I was, I got to get this role, I got it. And then when I realized later on that that's not the good approach or the right approach to it, I let go of it, and then I found like my true passion is the arts. So I kind of like resonated into it, and then from that point on, it was like all she wrote. I just had a great, and I knew the year that it happened too. It was like 2007, 8. And it was a bad year. And I don't mean, when I say bad year, it's not like...
because of the housing market in 2008?
No, it wasn't even that. It was me being what I consider a diva.
Oh, you were a diva?
No. So, and the reason I said that, because I think that there was some personal stuff going on in my life, my family. And I think I was running away from that. So I kind of like surrendered myself into like acting and everything. So I was, I was getting a lot of roles, but then I kind of get like demanding, like, oh, am I cast for this? Okay. Or like going to South Carolina and say, do you guys have a Starbucks or a hot tub? And like, no, what kind of hotel is this? So like dumb, weird things like that, and for me, it's like, you got to admit all the stuff, your things that aren't right.
You've grown.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but I see that, but then I remember there was a big party going on, and I won't say who.
Okay.
But
we can talk about that afterwards.
It was a big part. Yeah. But I remember leaving, and I was, like, I just happened to walk down. It was at the Pyramid. What was that? The Luxor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I walked down from there, and I stopped by New York, which is, like, right now. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what the heck am I doing? Like, it was just weird. Like, it was partying all the time and just flying. I think I flew, like, 30 times that year, So as we get into this life, and then I just, like, let go of that. And this just wasn't, and then.
Interesting.
Yeah, and after that, it kind of changed,
Well, people love the glamour. Do you know what I mean? The glamour side and the fun side. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I imagine you were talking about.
Yes.
But there's a price to pay for it.
Yes, it is. And it was crazy because, like, the following year I moved to L.A. and I had some weird experiences out there too, and it was, some of my fellow artists, or actors would say, hey, we go to this person's house and they'll, like, you see a lot of the stuff that you hear about. And I didn't want to be part of that. So I kept myself distance. And some people ask me now, they said, do you think that kind of like walking that fine line is attributed to you being in the service? And I don't know. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. I wouldn't know because I've been in this, who I am. I've been, a soldier and an artist at the same time. I do think that because I'm busy with all of it, like especially with school, that it kind of keeps me responsible in those things. Because like, for the military, I have a responsibility to soldiers in my unit, and then as an artist, I have responsibility to the director and the set, and they both kind of the same. I will tell you that though. Like you say, acting and the Army, what is that? I said no, they're actually structurally the same, and they're both discipline based. So I think to me, I put that first, so that anything afterwards, like like partying and things like that, it's like if I absolutely have time to relax, I might go to the beach, but I think on the forefront, it's like, always be ready, and to be ready, you have to be clear-minded. To be clear-minded, you can't be intoxicated. You can't be I never got into drugs, which is a good thing. I think it was probably my mother, discipline. But I think it's just always be ready, because like auditions come on the fly. We talked about this. Like yes. You get like 7 or 8 auditions, and so you always have to be ready to perform, ready to do anything, and I think that keeps you disciplined, and I think that's helped me. So. That along with like realizations on my own that like, that route of, going to parties and drinking and doing that's not good for you. It's not good for you spiritually or health wise, and I think that's what I never had a big problem with that. But I knew like if I went that route, then I was like, let me catch myself, not go that route,
Yeah, I imagine you've seen some cautionary tales about people.
Yes.
Who have gone too far. I imagine there's a price to pay as well if you don't sort of play by the rules of being social in that way. Mm-hmm. In other words, they expect you to go to the after party that if you're at a certain level. But if you don't want to, it's not to say that you're doing anything wrong, but you're also probably there's a limit either way. You're paying a price if you don't play by those rules, but you're paying a price if you do, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen it. Like I've gone to, I would say for the amount of films or like shows that I've gone to, maybe 10% of like the rap parties and the reason, and it was more of like 2008 that I did most of them, but I've done a few after. And, but I think, and sometimes I would get like a comment like, oh, you know, you got a network to build. And it's like, I do, but at the same time, it's a choice, you know? It's not to say you can't control yourself, you know, but it's more of, to be honest, it's more of timing. You know, there's times I went to a party and then it's like, hey, 2 days from now, I got to go overseas for something, you know? But at the same time, that's a risk you take, you know? And for me, I see it's a risk, but it's not one that like, I think it's that important for my soul. You know, to me, it's like, okay, you're not going to network at these parties. Okay, whatever. But it's not something later on I'm going to regret. It's more of like, I like doing this the way I'm doing it right now.
You're staying true to yourself. Exactly.
You know, and that's another thing, like, because to even suggest that, like someone, oh, you're going to network, it's like, do you really want to go to this? No, but I should. And my thing, especially, you know, I'm 47 years old, it's like, I'm not a kid, you know, it's like, if I don't want to do something, I want to do something, you know? And I think that goes a long way for yourself, because I never wanted to. There was you know, you see a lot of horror stories with a lot of artists, and I know other people, where I never wanted to sit in the future and look at something and regret how I got it, you know. And I think you have to stay true to yourself, but also make sure you're planting the right seeds as you go along, because that road travel is your road, and in the future you're gonna look back on that road, and if you have a lot of regrets, then it's like, you know, I understand things are out of control. Like there's a lot of things that happen in my life that I regret, but it was like, well, you know, you can't have it all. You know what I mean? But at the same time, you still can control the majority of like the decisions you make and how it affects you.
Right. If you're staying true to yourself.
Exactly.
I don't want anything that isn't supposed to be mine. I don't want anything off the back of someone else. I don't want anything that, you know, caused a tremendous amount of pain for someone else because I took it, you know, in an unethical way. I think I have to live with myself, and I can't run from myself, no matter what people say, unless you're a psychopath, I suppose.
Oh, yeah.
You know, to be able to shut yourself off from knowing that you've done someone wrong or done a situation wrong. There's something to be said about trying to stay true to yourself and in what you consider to be your ethics.
Right, and that's where a lot of integrity comes in, you know, and that's
your personal integrity.
Yeah, and that is, you know, like we're born with certain things. I think everybody's born wanting to be good people, you know, but a lot of times
with their conscience.
Yeah, just challenges in life cause people to, you know, and that's where, you know, you have like the moral compass, things like that. But I know for me, my integrity now is a result of mistakes that I've made in my life and ups and downs, so that it's kind of like ingrained in me, like, oh, actually, the last time this happened. So, and I think that makes you a better person if you're learning from your mistakes and if you're learning from things like that.
Well, and being willing to acknowledge and not have your ego be so big, you know, or your pride so big that you won't acknowledge that you are a human,
right? Who
maybe fell victim to some of the vices of being a human. I think we all are, and I think there's something to be said about self-esteem. If you have, at least that I've noticed, that someone with a strong sense of self is willing to admit that they made a mistake. But it's like the ones that kind of hide behind, you know, the story of why, or they're a victim or whatever. There's just something like, no, you just, you know, you wanted to do it or you liked that or whatever it is. It makes us human. And there's like, I don't know. I suppose I appreciate someone who's got enough self-esteem to say, here's the mistakes I made. Here's what I want to do next time. I mean, that's the best we can do.
It is. And you got to be content with who you are, you know, and it's, and that's it, you know, and I know like that feels better. Like I know a lot of times, especially like in the military, like I have a certain rank, and then there's, when somebody looks on the outside, someone's like 3 or 4 ranks lower, but I treat everybody like human beings. So otherwise, but you know, if somebody, and then I think your experience in life, you offer advice for someone, and that's where I think discipline comes in, or someone, like you shouldn't put somebody down, but it's more of like, hey, I've traveled this road longer than you to know this, but it's not, you're advising them because you care about the next step they make, you know?
Right.
So, in the military, there's different leaders that we have. And I know for me, my leadership style is to be more empathetic. But I also know that works for me because human connection's everything. Like there's some leaders that say, hey, do you got your equipment? And then for me, I'll say, everything good at home?
Aww, yeah.
But because these are people, you know, and I know, you know, I've gotten feedback from, you know, I say, hey, no, that's weird. But I think that human connection, that's where the artist side comes in, because a lot of art is empathy and relating. So I think that they both kind of mold me into who I am, and that's the approach. So it's kind of like when I'm, you know, doing acting, a lot of some of the military, as far as the discipline and the structure comes in, helps me stay on that course. And then in the military, a lot of the empathy and that side of being an artist comes into that. And I think it works, you know, because like we're not robots in the military, and we're not, you know, free flowing over here. Mm-hmm. So there's got to be a balance, and that's essentially what it is.
I saw, I think it was a TikTok actually, about a scene that Julia Roberts was in when she was doing Erin Brockovich. Mm-hmm. And it was an actor, director, very an understanding of how structure is in different scenes, was like, let's explain and break down this scene about why it was so amazing, because she had the right in the scene to be as angry as she could be. I think it was the scene where they were meeting with the lawyers who had presented their first offer, and it was like a terrible offer. And she was like, you know, I want to know how, I think the lines that she was saying is, how much is your uterus worth, you know, to the lawyers and things. So they were explaining how controlled she was, because she could have been emotionally very high and hot and out there, but it was actually more impactful that she wasn't. So she had like that kind of contained energy, which kind of reminds me of what you're talking about. I guess that's why that popped in my head, is because there is a discipline to it. Like you can't be too all over the place and too high, but having the discipline to be able to control your emotion, but still be able to express enough of it mm-hmm. in order to connect with people. That's kind of what all got put together in my head very briefly.
No, and that's interesting, because like there's that one of the, and let's say lessons, but one of the acting exercises or things in acting they talk about is like the subtleties with, they call it psychological reactions. Oh. Where if we're doing a scene, and that's kind of like a different, you talked about earlier about being in the union for stage, and it's like, oh, they're both different in a way, because so in film and TV, you have this like, you can look at somebody, but there's a slight reaction in the eyes that the camera picks up on. And it's that, and for me, it's like what we were just talking about, you don't want to give too much, but too little, but just enough to communicate what it is that you're feeling. But at the same time, that result is, you can't fabricate that. You know, it's a true result if you're true to the character.
If you're feeling
it. Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting. And that, like, there's a lot of actors out there that I like are my idol. You know what I mean? And,
who's your idol? Who's your idol? Like your number one?
Well, it's kind of balanced.
Okay, let's hear it.
So like Daniel Day-Lewis is one, and I know a lot of people, you know, say these things, but you know, I know we say De Niro, but Cate Blanchett actually.
She's wonderful.
Yeah, so and I remember arguing with somebody because they're like, "Well, I figured it'd be male." I'm like, shut up. You know? It's also seen as, you know what I mean, an artist is an artist. But I think with her performances, I like, there was I don't know if you ever seen the movie The Aviator.
No, I didn't see
it. So it's a great movie.
Okay, you know, good to know. Good to know.
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yes.
So he played Howard Hughes, and so and her performance in there was like she played Katharine Hepburn, but it's just a little intricacies in her performance that I pick up on, but it makes her more human. And the same thing with Daniel Day-Lewis. Like there was one of my favorite movies he did was There Will Be Blood, and then there's like an eye movement that he does where he's like doing kind of like this, mm-hmm. and you know that's communicating so much. It's like that's where that less is more thing. So it's like a little slight movement, but it tells a bigger story because it's got something inside that's percolating, and you just allow a little bit, and you're like, oh, I don't know. Whatever's under there is interesting, and they're conveying that. So
without words.
Yeah. So I think the actors that, and you know, and like especially, well, Leonardo DiCaprio is another one too. Like there's like this dedication to the character, and you know, and for me, it's not like you're copying that, but it's like I I respect it so much because it's like that discipline or that this writing is important. Like someone wrote this down and someone asked you to play this role. It's like, man, you got to give it your heart because
you embody it, right?
Yeah,
You're
exactly. Because like they
that.
trusted you to perform this. And so that's the responsibility of the artist. And so there's like, so a lot of those actors, they really convey that. And I respect that. And as an artist, it's like, oh, you know what, that I hope that, I continue, my success continues in that route where I'm able to do projects such as those to, for the purpose of communicating with the audience and bringing that to life the way they do,
Did you ever see Who's Eating Gilbert Grape? One of the very first times I really noticed Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yes,
it was an amazing performance. Yeah. I actually thought he was, truly mentally, physically somewhat handicapped anyway. I thought it was just amazing.
Yeah, and and he embodied that, but it's like he wasn't playing a character.
Right, it felt like real.
Yeah, and that's important. Real. Like you could tell somebody, oh, you're playing a character or you living this this person. Especially like Basketball Diaries was a good one too. I don't know if you.
I did not see. Yeah, I really clearly don't see enough movies. But it's good to have a list of movies that people think are stellar. I don't want to waste my time. There's so much media out there. It really almost is overwhelming. There's not enough time for me to watch what's out there. So I like to be very strategic with the way I spend it.
I use it as honestly, you laugh at me all you want, but I take a notepad to the theater. And people are like, what do you do? And I was like, I take notes because I look at it as an acting exercise. I'm like studying what does this,
I wonder how much that informs you to where you've been so successful.
A lot of it.
I imagine so. Yeah, I mean, you're taking it seriously, like you're saying. Mm-hmm. Because you've been in so many different projects. You've been on movies. You've been on Law and Order, which is like amazing. More than once, right? I think you had said, yeah. And also think about just the different projects that you've been on TV, you've been in print, you've been in commercials, you've been in movies. I mean, have you done any theater as well?
Yes, I have. And it was a lot more in New York though. And, but it's, with theater, like somebody asked me, what about community theater? I said, dude, if I was financially able to, I'll do community theater the rest of my life. I love that, and I think, the theater is, the audience is right there. There's something about theater where it's when you say something and then you hear somebody go, and you're like, we're communicating, that's taking place. But I've done a lot of theater in New York and it was, I've had a great time in it. There was one play that I did called Ghetto Babylon, and it was at the 59 Studios, which it's a really nice, I wouldn't say it's off Broadway, but it's a well-known theater up there. And well-known is not, everybody sees it. It's more of like, the capacity, and who's watching it and the community, and so I had a really good time. And actually, there's a whole little story about this. So, and it sounds like when I tell the story, he's like, "Well, that's really a big deal, or is it, or But it's to me, it is. So here's the thing. So when I was, when I first, I'm trying to think when it was, the first year I was acting, I was auditioning for Anna in the Tropics, and I started acting in Virginia because that's how I was stationed at, and I remember looking at the play. And I opened the cover. Inside, they always have the original performers of the play. So one of them is like Jimmy Smits. He's a Puerto Rican actor.
Yeah.
Sorry, but and he's been in a lot of stuff. And I was like, oh great, he performed that. And then that memory stuck for me for a reason. So like later on, I'm doing Ghetto Babylon, and then this was like 2013, 14, and then the play gets published, and I'm at the Drama Bookshop. I don't know if you know the Drama Bookshop in New York. So Drama Bookshop is where Lin-Manuel wrote, Hamilton. But if you're ever in New York, you got to go to the Drama Bookshop. It's only one. It's not a chain. It's one. And everybody and anyone goes there. Like you have people in the basement writing plays, and it's an actor's haven. So I was there, and I'm looking through the plays, and I see, 10 books in a row, same back. Ghetto Babylon, and I open it. And I caught a tear because like original cast and my name's in this book.
Wow.
So so like somebody's like, well, you don't know because that's my personal. But like, I'm sitting at the Drama Bookshop with a play that I did, so like there's another actor who's going to pick up this book
and see your name
and read and say, oh, this is the original cast. You know what I mean? So to me, it was like, man, that's crazy. But I feel like as artists, and it's not about like, oh, my name's out there. Look at me. It's more of you gotta check in with yourself, and that's what I saw it as. it didn't matter if like, because maybe a lot of people don't even know about this play. Maybe no one's heard of it. Maybe 10, you know what I'm saying? But that wasn't it. It was me. It was something like, I feel like the universe telling me, hey, you're on the right track, or you're on the right path.
You almost completed a loop by seeing Jimmy Smith's name, and then you got to see your own name.
Yeah, and I was like, this is really,
it's important.
Yeah, and I'm like, man, this is crazy. Because even then, like, you go outside, and then some friends of mine would take pictures of me and say, oh, look, your name's on this billboard here for this. And that's another thing about that, because you don't know the impact that it has on people, and like sometimes we do stuff, but then like I have certain friends and acquaintances that check in and say, hey, by the way, keep doing what you're doing because it's inspiring. You just don't know it. And but that's how we keep each other up, because like acting is not an individual thing. It's a community. And that's one reason why I've also like stayed away from like people trying to like cut each other down, or because I look at it and I was like, man, actors always support. The other day I was I continue to do this to this day, but any of my friends that have auditions, they'll call in. I was working with somebody, we worked together on a few, but there was another person the other day that she was having a bad day with her script, and like I didn't have time, but I was like, make time. And so I went into depth with her script. It's not my audition, it's her audition, but this is our community. If someone's getting a role, if someone's getting their work produced, then we all are getting our stuff, because we're all that community. You can't act by yourself. So like you got to support your fellow artists. And
I love that, because it feels like if you're helping, like you're saying, you're helping someone else, you're actually helping yourself, because you are showing people an example of what could be for yourself. That's the way I look at it. Like, oh, if someone gets this really great voiceover job that is now, on a commercial in the Super Bowl, which is one of my goals. Seriously someday. So it's out there in the universe now. I've never told anybody that, but like imagining that if I see someone else actually have that happen, well, then it's possible for me too, and that's a gift in a way. It's encouraging. I'm not jealous of it. I want, or envious. I want to have that same experience, and I would hope that something I did would be encouraging for someone else too. It's partly why I like this show, because one of the things that I'm hoping people hear is your passion for what you're doing, as well as what your path was, because someone else may have a similar obstacle that they've been able to overcome, and because they got advice from you. And there is room for everyone, because not anyone is like you. Exactly.
No, we're all different. And that's the thing. Like you're always, it's kind of like, I'm trying to think, I'm getting confused. I don't know if it's Plato or Aristotle. When he said
get it right, okay? Because I'm just, this is serious. No,
it's but it might be. I think Plato was the one who wrote what Aristotle said down, but he said he knew. I think he knew everything when he admitted he knew nothing. You know, and that's, to me, that's capacity or potential energy. So like we always have to be. There's always room for improvement or knowledge or to know things, and I'm always on that lookout to like learn something new, and it actually influences like. Also, just something weird. So I don't know if you ask me how many roles or how many projects you've done. I don't know. I can't give you a number, but I can tell you every time I get a part, it feels like the first time.
Oh.
And I don't want to ever lose that. And I told somebody, if I ever lose that, if I felt like I didn't get the part because I was supposed to get it, I'm out of here. Because as soon as then you're not. I have to live with my passion in this, and if I treat it as that, then I can't do it. And that's one thing that's never left me to this day, at all. And I. Like, pray to God it doesn't. but even with that, something else too, and I know with auditions sometimes it can be discouraging. And that's one thing I wanted to talk about, because there's times where we do a bunch of auditions, and then you're like, man, what am I doing wrong? And there's a lot of actors, including myself, right?
I'm the same way with voiceovers. I'll get several, and then I'll get nothing for months. And
you get 10. You do 10 auditions in 1 week and not get one. But then what I started, and I actually, I want to say it's Domingo Coleman. I was watching something of his because the Screen Actors Guild, they have the SAG-AFTRA Foundation. I don't know, it's really good. I have to like connect you to it. I don't think you have to be a member.
Nice, hooray! Because I'm not a member.
But if you follow the page, they always have these videos. And he was on stage, and to me, like he's a really successful actor and everything, but to hear him say he'll get an audition, and then like what changed in him is that he stopped thinking about, is he going to get this part? Is this going to happen? I feel like something, but anyway, so he just did it, and then he moved on. And then that's when, but because it was in the back of his head about, am I going to get this? Then he feels like it may have infringed on his performance. And that was interesting because the way I started seeing it was like, I get like 7 or 8 auditions a week. And like real time, like the last couple of weeks has been kind of hectic because I got like these military temporary missions coming up. And I'm looking at my schedule, like I got to turn this down because I can't. But I still do them. And sometimes, and the reason I still do them and help other people with theirs is because it's all the training, right? A lot of times we pay for acting schools, acting classes. But if you get an audition, when you go to acting school, a lot of people know, if there's listeners out there who do acting, they know they'll go to a workshop. And they may not, they'll sit in a workshop for 3 hours and they may say they're seen once or not at all, you know? And so when you get an audition, that's a free, like all you need is 2 actors and that's a free class.
Wow, it's true. That's
Right.
a very good way to look at it. It's experience. And
yeah, and you bring stuff to it. And I know one thing, because there's like even different techniques. So I first trained with Meisner technique. And then when I went to Stella Adler, that's the Adler technique. And there's a lot of like Stanislavski in there and, you know, things like that. But so the mixture of it, and I think that didn't hit me like until 2022 when I started marrying the two or having my own twist on it. And I started taking some of the things that I learned from there and then combine it with other stuff. And when I combined it, I said, this is working for me. And so whenever I'm working with other actors who call me, say, hey, my audition, I give them, pay it forward, right? So I'll tell them, you know, like recently, this one actress that I'm working with, she's got a audition for one of the Tyler Perry shows. And so one thing I explained to her, and I said, hey, always set the scene, right? So there's know where you're at because you have to live in the scene. And then you have to use the imagination and all that. But that came from like me training at Stella Adler. We talk about imagination, prop, and all that kind of stuff. And then the Meisner technique comes in when we're doing the promotion, performance. So when I'm looking at that, that's a way of me not reteaching, but kind of staying connected with the things that I've learned, but also visiting a new character. Because like I learned something from her script. Like I said, it's not my part, right? But it doesn't matter. You know, as an artist, it's your responsibility to keep training, and you have to find moments to do so, right? Like, you know, with acting, you have to do your vocal exercises. Mm-hmm. You have to do your reading. So it's like with a busy schedule, you have to take every moment and do the most with it. And that's also helps with balance. I mean, earlier you said you got school, acting, army.
Lots
but
of
I
hats.
think what helps me with that is like you can only focus at one thing at a time. See, and it's normal for a human to be like, I'm doing this, but their mind is what I got to do tomorrow. Well, tomorrow's not here. Why are you worried about what you got to do tomorrow? When tomorrow comes, do what you have to do. So like right now, my time is with you on this amazing show. It's really cool. I love it. But my focus is here because this is what's happening in the moment.
Right. Like I don't touch my phone other than to look at notes. And then when I leave, I'm like, my goodness, I've got like 12 emails that just came in the last hour. But it does feel like one of the things I like about this show is that I get to focus on, without distraction, this exact moment. And the presence of it, yes. I can't fake it. I can't not, you'll know. Mm-hmm. But also I like what you're talking about regarding the way that you approach different scenes. It's the same for voiceover because I'm supposed to, and it's encouraged, and you can hear it when you don't, imagine the scenes. I'm imagining myself with a bunch of groceries in my hands and I'm having trouble opening my minivan, and I get to just throw my foot underneath the bumper and it opens the back, and you can tell if you have that in your head. Yeah. You can hear it. And I'm imagining that's just voice. So if you're really being an actor and showing all of, your whole body, I can imagine that all of that translating out. If you don't have it really a real true imagination that way, right, you'll miss a connection.
And it's sometimes like hats off to you because like to me, and I know the voice of the actor is like voice is everything. But like voiceover seems a lot harder at times because,
really?
Yeah, because like with voice you have to. There's a saying, I think it's voice you paint voice is for the eyes, and then visual is for the ears or something. And we use that in broadcasting.
Right.
So and especially when you're saying like when doing narration for radio shows, they'll say you got to paint, and that so you really got to paint the picture for the every as you know, of course, every inflection in your voice it paints it's like a different stroke. on the visual
Well, that's
spectrum,
very interesting.
You know?
I didn't actually think about it that way. I hadn't heard that, but it is true. Definitely true. Because there are days where I'm, for some reason, can tap into emotions in a different way. And there are days where I feel like I'm just kind of, I don't know, phoning it in, but I'm not as dynamic in my emotions. But the days that I am very dynamic, I'll go back and listen to the auditions that I've done and see where I am in the process of whether I've gotten to the second level of auditions, you know, like a callback kind of thing. And I'm like, do I like this or not? Because there are days where I'm like, that was a terrible audition. Well, I'm also hard on myself, but at the same time, there are times where I'm like, oh my God, I was so good at that one. It was just a good day. Yeah. You know, I just understood what they wanted and I was able to kind of bring it. And it's very satisfying to have those moments. Yeah. But to be in that level, because I'm just sitting in oftentimes, you know, my workout clothes or whatever in my booth. No one knows what I look like. But like to bring that A game every time with not just your voice, but being as an actor, it's a completely different level of what you're doing, I think. So I don't know if it's harder. It's just different. It
is different, but it's just because they're all like, so I've done, you know, some voiceover as well, and then stage, and then TV film, and they all, and that's, you see that with commercial too. Yeah. Oh, big time. Like that's a whole other
thing too. But it's wonderful to know that you really are sort of a well-rounded and balanced person in a lot of ways, not just in the acting world, because you do have lots of different avenues that you've been able to explore, but also balancing yourself out with the military side of you and the discipline side of you, and caring about the craft itself, which I don't know, I hadn't heard someone talk about it like that before, where it's not about you and getting ahead. It's more about just honoring the human side of being an actor and connecting with people and communicating and contributing to the art itself, not just like Rodney. Yeah, the Rodney brand.
It's like, because like the sound of was that saying that a tree falls and makes sound, no one's there. But you gotta, acting, you have to have a partner. I mean, or maybe not. I could just do it myself.
You could do the monologue, but it's not the same.
Yeah, but you're still seeing somebody.
You're right. You're talking to someone.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but there's acting and then, you know, and something, you need a viewer. Does acting take place if there's no viewer?
That's way deep for me right now. I've had a long week. That's a hard question to ask me on a Friday.
It's like if you would say, if there's no picture, did it exist? Like, no, but I mean, if you're at an empty theater, it's like, oh, I had an amazing performance.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Yeah.
Did you connect to someone, and did they leave with an experience?
Yeah.
And then they translate that experience, and then it's like a chain reaction. You know?
Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What is your 5-year goal? What's the big dream?
Well, I'll say, so 5 years from now, let me see. So I'll be done, hopefully done with my PhD in 2 years. And
are you Dr. So-and-so then?
Yes.
Okay. Nice.
But I want to do something interesting with that. So like my thesis, I wanted to turn it into a documentary.
Oh, wow.
So that's because I was like, I'll do the thesis, but then I want to translate it into a documentary. And I think it'll be better if, you know, it's not saying I have the doctorate by my name, but it was like someone who's in the field.
Yes.
And then, and ironically enough, I want to do it in media. So I haven't decided what. Probably the fall of media, but.
Oh, jeez. Maybe by then. Let's hope that's not the case.
No, it's not. But, but something along, you know, because the PhD is in communication, so it has to be related to one of the theories. So that's what I want to do with that. And then by then, I'll also be retired from the military. So.
You'll be able to be an actor full time.
Exactly. You know.
Sorry, did I take that notion out of your head as I was just kind of like, wait, I'm imagining you, because you had said you do both, and so wouldn't it be amazing if you didn't have to talk? Like, you're leaving for, where are you going on Sunday?
Well, we were like the Southeast Asia.
Yeah, you're going to Southeast Asia. Like, and imagine that you don't have to do that toggling back and forth.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the thing. So all the stuff happening now, it's I would say that it's kind of like when you're building a building and then you have the structure on the out. What do you call it? I'm trying to think of the right term. The metal.
Yeah.
The frame that kind of.
Yeah, the framework.
So that's what happens, and I think everything happens for a reason, right? So for me, one, finishing the service, but it also, because you gotta be realistic, it also has a financial, I get retirement pay. So that also creates a financial base so that it does, because a lot of times as performers, I'm sure there's a lot of people that I know a person that just act to make money. They don't act to make money. They act and they need to make money in order to supplement their passion. So for me, having retirement, at least that creates a financial stability where I don't have to. I can work on any project and not think, okay, I have to take this job because it pays this much because I have this coming up. And then with the, my PhD, it also gives me ability to stay grounded with anything related with communication and, kind of with the filmmaking side of it too as well. And that's what I think. So I think, people look, they say, oh, you're busy with all these things. Does that stress you out? It's like, there are times that it is stressful, but I like doing all three. You know what I mean? I find myself in all three. So it's easy to cope with it, but then it's not forever,
Right. Things
like
are
there's a plan. And as long as this plan is important to you, because a lot of people want to tell you how to, maybe you should do this when you do this. Like, I got it. Like, trust me, I got it. It's working.
I won't give you any of it.
No. I mean, advice is welcome, but I'm
saying,
it's because people don't see it. And I remember it was like, when I have some friends I know for 20 years, and they see me now, and they're like, that's what you were talking about. I said, I told you, trust me, I got a plan. Like, it's not. But those are like lessons learned, because I've seen stuff that happens to certain people, and I'm like, how can I prevent that? And that's the best you can do. We don't know what the future looks like, but you don't know what the future looks like, but you know what each brick looks like that you lay on the road that you're traveling on, and that's also like where you have to pay attention to, because it's like a lot of people want to know, what's your goal, and it's like, but the focus isn't the goal, because you have to live. You know what I mean? What are you going to do? Just like 10 years from now, I want to do this. But then are you paying attention to those 10 years? Are you living in the moment, now? Being present? Right. You said something earlier about being present, right? So like that's what art is the more compelling an art is how present the performer is, especially when you're doing TV, film, voiceover. It's like how present you are. And but we have to be present every day in our life, because realistically tomorrow isn't promised, right? So like you have to live your life to the fullest today. What does that look like to you? And what's that road look like to you every day? And that for me is, I like doing these things. There's a purpose behind it. One part of my mind is this end result looks like this, but the other part is focus on the now and how you're living it. And, sometimes it's hard to balance. Like, this is one of them times where it's like, but then I know a few weeks from now it's going to be easy. So
if anyone wanted to get in touch with you about the different projects that you have and would like to know more about you, where can they find you?
But I'm on all the social media platforms.
Rodney, you did it with like a rolling. You did it with Roldan. I'm trying to do it.
But you can say Roldan.
Roldan.
Yeah, but it's
so sorry. No, Roldan. I want to say it with like the accent.
No, but I'm on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. And then reach out to me any of those. So.
Well, I've had so much fun talking to you. It's very inspiring to me in many ways. But one of them is just knowing that with the success that you have, you don't even have to be as nice as you are,
No.
Or caring about other actors as much either, because I always think that as the more successful people are, the more they're just kind of like, my time is so precious. I'll just give it to you some. But you actually really do still care, and that's a testament to your character. But also knowing that you are really investing in not just you yourself, but the future of what this art form is. And years from now, your grandkids will be watching different things that you make, and you care about that too. But also, and they'll learn something about you too. It's not just, oh, this is going to make me a lot of money, but actually, no, this is a reflection of what I was interested in at the time.
Yeah, and it's
it's really special.
Yeah, and it's one of the things some people say, like, that's a weakness. Oh, you shouldn't care too much about, because your time, I know your time is precious, things like that, but I think I just go with what feels good in the heart for me, And if I know someone needs something, it's like conscious.
I know, conscious is a real thing.
Like, it's like, I think somebody would message me, like, can you help me with this audition? And I see it, and I'm watching something, and I'm like, dang well, you could help this person out right now. Like, you really doing anything? And I was like, let me call him.
Aww.
And then I'll tell him, I'll say, hey, I was watching something, but I felt bad. And like, just, sometimes you need a rest, but at the same time, I think you may not know the degree in which someone needs something. So it's important. Like, it might seem not much of a big deal to you, but it's a big deal to them in the same way things I was taught was a big deal to me. And maybe it wasn't for that person. So we all pass each other, things. I do hear like, you can't care too much because you could like let people in too much and all. I was like, I hear you, but in the grand scheme of things, this is what makes us human, so I decide to stick to that side of it, I know that has its ups and downs, but to me, that's just important for me,
Well, I would love for you to come back sometime because obviously you've got lots of projects that you're working on, and who knows what the future will bring. But what a pleasure it's been to kind of hear about your story and what makes you tick and how you have been able to succeed in a way I think a lot of people would love to be able to say in the acting world. And this is a huge community for it right here in the Atlanta area. So maybe someone that's listening will have that kind of inspiration to be like, oh, what's really interesting to me when it comes down to it. They don't have to compromise who they are in order to succeed.
Right.
And there's a lot to be said for that, I think, especially when it's this kind of world would love to mold you into something that they think that they could make money off of. But for you to be able to stay true to yourself and still succeed is it's really exciting to see, and it gives me encouragement to stay on my course. Yeah. So thank you.
No, thank you for having me.
Of course.
It's been a pleasure talking to you. Other times you kind of lose the microphone today.
Oh, I know, right?
We're just having a conversation.
It's exactly the way I tell people. Just come in. It's going to be fun. I promise. Yeah. I think. Well, thank you all for listening to Fearless Formula on Business RadioX. And again, this is Sharon Klein reminding you, with knowledge and understanding, we can have our own fearless formula. Have a great day.